back to Nunchucks.com. It's Ken Hill. It's good to see everyone again. In case you forgot, I got a shoulder injury, dislocated shoulder. I'm on week 2.5, so I can't do a whole lot with my dominant hand right now, which has led me to have to use my less dominant hand, and it's helped me to understand just how much one can rely on one's dominant side. I think if you want to try an experiment of doing absolutely nothing with your dominant hand all day. What I mean by that is try driving, try opening your door, try getting dressed with only your left hand or your right hand. If you're left-handed, use your right hand. Try that out and see what happens. I think it's really good for your brain. That's for sure. It's a bit of a challenge, but in the end, I think what you'll feel is there may not even be I think ambidexterity is just a trained thing. But I used to think that it was some sort of gene, but I think it's trained. Because as time goes on, it just gets easier and easier to use my left hand for things. With that said, because I like to ramble, I'm going to bring in some guest instructors pretty soon, just so we can get some extra techniques in there that use both hands. Troy Bonenkamp from Flow Flyers, he should be here soon. He's got a wizard brain, so he'll teach them intermediate to advanced tutorials. Today is a little bit more intermediate, so if you want to, you can review over the beginner tutorials if you're still just basically getting in, or if you're just coming in on this video, highly recommend you start at the first week. Just go to my YouTube page and go to the long videos and start there. We're going to work on under the leg aerials, and we're also going to work on the last wrist roll, which is the front to front wrist roll. So first let's start with under the leg aerials. Now you remember in the aerials class, there's a few golden rules. One, start with a light chuck. Don't use a heavy chuck. These are foam right now. I use the foam so that way I can iron out the techniques before I go to fire chucks, which are extremely heavy. I iron out the techniques on the foams. So that way, if I hit myself, I'm going to be okay. Number two is be sure to follow through and don't go too fast. If you spin too fast, there's going to be too much rotation for you to catch it. And there's also more chances of injury. So don't give it a whole lot of spin, okay? Remember when you throw your aerials, especially at first, give it a really light, easy throw. It may only get one revolution in the air, but that'll give you more time to be able to chase it and to catch it and to be able to visualize it. And as you get faster, of course, you can add more spins. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this chuck and we're going to spin it counterclockwise. You remember this was kind of like I think it was 2 classes ago or so. What we're trying to do is we're trying to, when it hits between 6 o'clock and 3 o'clock, as it's moving between that space, we launch it up in the air. So 6 and 3, we launch it up in the air. And as it's up in the air and it's rotating, our hand's coming up, and we're going to move our hand faster than the nunchuck is spinning, and we're going to snatch it out of the air. And as we pull it down, that's going to send it right back into rotation. Here, grab. And that snatch down is what keeps it back into rotation. Now, we can do that with our under the leg. The only thing that we have to be careful about with this under the leg move is that, 1, you clear the leg, because it could wrap around there. 2, if you just throw it, we want to make sure that it goes straight up. Because, as you notice, to get under the leg, we're going to have to do a little bit of an extension. And if you let go right here, it's going to fly that way. That makes sense, right? So the best way I can describe an under the leg aerial is to make the letter G. So if we stand here with our chuck, and as you notice, I'm holding it actually horizontally. And I draw the letter G and pull it back. And it's not a big pullback, but it is enough to where I go pull back and let go. So if I don't make that last part of the G, as soon as I let go here, it's going to go that direction because my hand is moving that direction. So we have to rotate it back. We have to pull it back to give it that momentum to keep it going this direction. So here, and like that. Let's go with this first. Take your hand, we're going to spin it counterclockwise like this. Do you see this circle that the nunchuck is making on the outside? This part right here is drawing a circular line. I want you to take your arm now and go across that line that the nunchuck was spinning in. Okay, so we're kind of swinging around the perimeter of it. This is kind of like a float. We're kind of floating the chucks right now. Or extension, I guess I could call it. Once we get to here, we're going to lower it just a little bit to where it would go where our leg would be. Okay, so it's kind of clearing right above the thigh right here because we're going to lift our leg up. And this is eventually where it's going to land. But we're going to practice like this, and then at the last moment we're going to lift up our leg like this. Okay, the last part of it, as soon as it comes under the leg, right before we let go, we give it a slight pullback. So here, slight pullback. That pullback is so subtle, it's not like, that last part of the G is not like this big, it's like this big. It's very small. Catch. So if you're clockwise, like this, we can go into the table bounce that we learned a couple weeks ago. Remember, this is the table bounce here. This will allow you to quickly change your directions. So you're going clockwise. Table bounce, under the leg. Like that. Without the nunchuck, it's going to go shwoop. If that's easy for you, try it with a kick. What's hard about that move is you're going two directions. You're pushing forward and you're going around. And it's really hard to throw a kick like this. So, but you know, that adds a little bit of variety. Just, or you can do it with an outside pressing kick as well. Practice all the different kicks. You'll realize though, as you throw a kick, it's hard to get a lot of power because usually when you throw a kick, your body leans backwards. But here you have to lean forward and get it under. So it's definitely something to practice. And I think the more flexibility you have, the better you can pull off a kick when throwing under the leg. Okay, the last move I want to show you today is the front to front wrist roll. This. It's considered one of the most difficult of the wrist rolls, but then again, that's all relative. Some people are probably going to get this real easily. Others are going to have to take their time with it. Okay, front to back. This is number one, you remember. You're in a front grip, the chain wraps around the back of the fist, your hand opens, and it goes to a back grip. The back to front, which is the second wrist roll, is the exact opposite. You're in a back grip, you hand roll it back to the front grip. Now the third one that we just learned this one, is when you're standing in a back grip. Okay, the chuck is moving in the front, oops, chuck is moving in the front, whoop, we dip it behind. See that very subtle movement here? It's spinning in the front, and we dip it behind so it gets in the way of the wrist. So if I'm standing this way, it's in front of the wrist, it's behind the wrist, right there. That momentum right there is going to cause it to go upwards. As soon as it goes upwards, this hand flicks it out of the way, like that. The fourth wrist roll, the best way to describe this wrist roll, and this one's going to take some time probably, is to think of it like this. This is how the wrist roll looks. So the first thing I want you to do is practice this, like this. Stick your thumb out and twist it. I don't know, almost like you're pushing in a like if there's a screw in the wall and somehow your thumb was like a flathead screwdriver and you could twist it. Because the move, well, it's not going to be that dramatic of a twist, but I want you to get that motion down of this. What you're going to do is we're going to spin it counterclockwise, like so. Clockwise. Sorry, it's one of those days. And this is in front of the wrist, now it's going behind the wrist. Look at how my hand is, though. You want to actually get that chain to go across the wrist this direction, okay? This is kind of hard without being able to use my hand, but you want it to connect this way, so the other chuck is actually connecting right here on this part of the wrist. That's probably the hardest part, is getting that aim down right there. So don't even let it go, because really, once you let it go, it's going to go the direction that you aimed it. So get your aim first, and then you'll get the wrist roll. Right here. Boom. This is, we'll call that step one. Step one is to be able to get this to land on top of your wrist. Don't go very hard, because it can be kind of hard on your wrist. Do it nice and easy at first. Clockwise. Boom. Like that. The second part is to realize where this chuck is going. And where the chuck is going is actually, this hand's going to open up, and you're going to open up your thumb and your pointer finger. It's going to create a point where the chuck needs to roll right inside this part of the hand, like that. So again, step one's like this. Step two, this hand's going to open up. My pointer finger and my thumb is where it's going to land. It's going to land right in between, right there in that crevice, and we're going to grab. Boom. Boom. Okay, so here, here, If you break it down, it's not going to look right. Oops. Thought I could do it while stopping it, but it's not going to work that way. You're going to open it up, but the momentum's still going to go, and then this is going to roll in your hand, and you're going to grab it and keep it going. So now you should be able to practice all four. And that also means anytime you do a front to front or a back to front, you should be able to keep that roll going. You should be able to keep going a wrist roll in any direction now, because you've got your back to back this way if you're going counterclockwise. If you're going clockwise, you got your front to front. And then what you'll realize is your back to front, your front to back, the very basic moves are just your transitions to get to the third and the fourth one. And what I mean is, I'm in a front grip, I go to a back grip, and now I can do back grips forever. If I'm in the back grip, I do the other move, I go to a front grip, and now I can do front grips forever. So that's how the four kind of play, how to play in space. And eventually what we'll want to be able to do is the back to back and front to front across this whole area. Don't just keep it in the center, we're going to learn how to extend it and put them into anti-spins and all kinds of other fun jazz. So work on those moves. If you have any questions, contact me via YouTube or nunchakutricks.com.